Hello. So maybe there was just a breakthrough with this automaton that my team and I have been working on. And the idea here you can see, I mean, is this not a hydrogen atom? Um, Looks like it to me. And if you look down here, you can calculate it. And we can see it's stable. So I'm clicking on calculate, and people, will often say, well, it just expands. It doesn't. It doesn't just expand. I mean, it's stable. See, I'm clicking on it. And maybe that part, the heat grid part. What's different? I'll show you what's different. So here you can look at, we are using all of we're using all 9 cells in the von Neumann neighborhood. Is it technically? I don't know if it's technically a von Neumann neighborhood if it uses the corners. Anyway, we're using all 9 cells. But if you look at the calculation, we're only using the full value of the central cell. We're using 46% of the left, right, up, down, and then it would be front and back in 3 dimensions. And we're using 8% of the corner cells. And I'll show you why that is. So if you just give me a second here. I'm looking away. I don't know. Oh, I did not save that? That is disappointing. Hold on. What about the other? Okay. Okay, here. This will show you why. I look away because I don't know if, I've got my financials on here. And honestly, when I click on something on the computer, I don't know if maybe it's going to pop up, all my financial stuff or whatever. No, I don't want to this way. Okay, so now if you look here, you can see this is why we use the different percentages. So this represents the distance that energy matter can travel in 1 Planck unit, 1 Planck time, which is from here, the center, to here, the radius. Okay, and then if you think that energy can travel with complete freedom of movement, then it will travel outward in all directions. And that creates this circle. And it intersects the grid, 100% of the center grid. It intersects, and I know there's a better way to compute this, but it's approximately 46% of here, 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 and here, up, down, left, right. Approximately 46%. That's not exact, okay? So we could figure out what it exactly is. Oh, hi, Robert. You know what? It doesn't let me. I'm just doing this quick. So, Robert, just if you're looking at the comments, Robert said, "Did Gary figure out unified physics before he figured out screen capture?" I'm not a streamer, okay? Robert, I'm not like a streamer. So it's not what I do. I'm not like big into streaming. I do know that I'm allowed to live video on YouTube, but YouTube will not allow me that I know of. I mean, it's very easy just to click go live, but then it has to be a direct stream like this. There's no way for me to capture the actual screen. So, I mean, you can see what I see, right? So it works. So here it captures then 100% of this central cell and 46% approximately of the left, right, up, down, and it would be forward, back if this were in 3 dimensions. And then 8%. And you can figure this out, like, why 8%? Well, look. So you've got a cell up here, and let's just count, This is 100, it's 10 by 10. And you can just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's approximately 8%. And you can do the same here. You can count all the cells. It's 100 cells. you count 40, there's approximately 46 cells. It's good enough for our calculations. Now, so what we do is then we input that into here. And then, by the way, what this grid then, it looks like, as somebody pointed out, it looks like what is called a flower of life, which is, I don't really know much about it, and we're not trying to make this into some kind of sacred geometry. It just comes naturally out of the math. Of course, you always do the math, you always do the science first, and then if you can find any kind of culture or poetry out of that, then you can apply that, which is always fun. But it always starts with the math, right? And the grid, it looks like what is called a flower of life. So if you want to Google that, you can Google that, and you'll see that it's basically the flower of life, which makes sense. I mean, it just makes sense. And the poetry is really cool too, because obviously the universe is like a flower of life. Now, when you enter a value, let's say we enter 1,000 here, what you're going to see, it's going to spread out. And this is what when I first did this, I saw this with my own eyes, and this is when I knew we were onto something. Now, imagine it was just like an energy pulse. Okay, so now when I drag this down, what it does is it resets the cell. So now there's no longer energy being put into the simulation. The energy's there. Okay, now look what happens over here. Now here is where we enter our energy. Now what is this? This is the heat map layer. Okay, and if you look at what the equation of it is, I'm using absolute values. It should not. Ideally, it should not be absolute values. I don't remember why I made this particular automaton like 7 months ago. I don't remember why it has absolute value there, but until I can remember why, I'm just going to leave it there because there might be a good reason why I did it. But even doing that, you can see, okay, you can see how it affects our heat map. And down here, this is the vector layer. And I like to think of what's going on here. Let's put in a negative value. It's really best to put in negative and positive values. So if you put in like negative 1,000 and 1,000, now we're going to see what happens. I'm just going to calculate this through a few times, and then I'm going to calculate this through like 20 times. Now we're injecting energy matter into the system. Now by dragging this down, it's going to reset that cell and that cell. Everything else is unchanged. So the values will be unchanged. You'll see. But now what it does is it's resetting the equation. See this equation up here? Because when I override the equation by putting in a value, I can drag it down and it'll reset that. And let's go see what happens to our heat layer. I don't really even know what's going to happen, but we'll find out. Maybe we did not have a Eureka moment. I don't know. It felt like it. It felt like it was a Eureka moment. Let's see. Maybe because we're using absolute values. I don't know. What we can do is we can reset this whole thing. I'll show you what I saw a few minutes ago. And what we can do then is we can go find and replace. Control F. And what we're going to find and replace is, how about this this part? And you'll see why I'm doing this. So divided by 3.14. So now we're actually, and what I want to replace with, I'm gonna find and replace with the exact same thing. You'll see why I'm doing this. So when I do that, it resets the entire grid. Okay. So all the magnitudes that were there have all been reset, but the equations have not been reset. We have to do things this way because of Excel. It's just weird things about Excel. So now let me show you what I first saw. And let's start by putting in, I don't know, 1,000. And let's do negative 1,000. And what we're going to do, now when you calculate it, you see how it creates these waves through it? It's very cool. So now we're just entering in, now we're going to reset those values just by dragging it down. And we have to do that because if you look, where is it? Oh, I'd reset it, so it's not there anymore. But if you look here, like what's in that cell is just the magnitude now. But other cells have the equation. So you have to reset the cell. And I think I reset this one, but just in case. Now, every time I drag this down, all it does is it resets the equation. It does not reset the magnitude. And now if we go look at the heat map, I mean, tell me this does not look like a hydrogen atom. Go look at the electron clouds of a hydrogen atom. But these are actually opposite. They should, oh, but it's absolute values. See, that's the problem here. But anyway, so it's always going to be positive. But anyway, but look at it. I mean, tell me that is not, that's a hydrogen atom. I mean, right? That's the electron cloud of a hydrogen atom. And this is what I saw, and I was like, Eureka? And then look at the vector layers. I mean, that's a hydrogen atom. I mean, tell me that's not a hydrogen atom. And look at the way these electrons push out to the side. Remember, you have to remember one's positive, one's negative. Oh, but actually, it's we should do that. We'll do this again without the absolute. We'll see what happens. But I mean, if you look at the way the electrons even push out to the side, and if you look at like just in a textbook of what it looks like, you've got two atoms next to each other. It looks like that. They push it. They push out to the side like that, and it's entirely emergent. Right? It's entirely emergent. And people say, well, your atoms, they just keep on growing and growing forever. Not really, dude. I mean, look, I'm clicking on calculate over and over and over again. And it's not really growing too much. And if you look at what the vectors are actually doing, then you can see that it lines up with the electromagnetic fields of a particle. Down here is, I can't remember what was going on down here. I haven't used this in a very long time, but these are all different ways of representing the data. And I think this one, so this one you can see, do they concatenate? Yes, okay, so they concatenate here. So you can see here, this is positive, this is negative. Remember how we put it in? Now, because of the way that they subtract over here, but they're opposites, right? Remember we put in a negative and a positive. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the negative and the positive. And we're seeing how are they flowing into each other? How they flow into each other. And that's what happens in an electromagnetic field. You see all these arrows? It's probably pretty blurry, but let me see if I can. Yeah, that made it worse. Sorry. Terrible idea. Hold on. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so you see the arrows flowing to each other? That's an electromagnetic field. Here we can see how positive flows into negative. We use these big fat arrows for negative just to better discern the data. And that's an electromagnetic field, dude. So what would be really cool to see is how there's a heat map. Looks like Gannon. from Legend of Zelda, like Ganon's nose. I don't know. Are you a gamer? I'm a gamer. I used to be a big gamer. So what else? I mean, trying to figure out how to make all the different electron clouds. So, I mean, that looked like hydrogen. But there's all different kinds of clouds. And if they're at a certain distance away from each other, I bet we can see different kinds of, let's say, like put 10,000 into there. And then they should overlap right next to each other. What happens if they're right next to each other? Let's find out. 10,000. We're just putting them right next to each other. And I'm just going to, and look what happens if you don't cancel out the equation. And we just imagine that, oh, okay. So now there's just energy being pushed into the system. It should get really hot, I think. But maybe because they're subtracting, it goes into negatives. I don't know. But what goes on down here? Okay. I think there's a problem with using the absolutes. I'm just screwing it up by using the absolute values. I don't remember why I used absolute values, but we can cancel it out. Let's try that. Let's see what happens. I think maybe that'll be all I do today. But I'll go find and replace, Control F, and then we'll go replace all. And again, it's just going to reset. You might be like, isn't there an easy way to just reset Excel? No, there is not. This is the hack to do it. There's no real easy way that I know of to just reset the values as opposed to the equations. Now we'll go over here and let's change this so it's no longer absolute. And we'll see what happens. Now what I'm doing is I'm spreading that equation across the entire grid and then pulling down. Excel is really, people always make fun of Excel. Excel is really so well suited to this. It's hard to imagine how it could be better. The only way I can imagine it being better would be if it was in 3D and if there was a way to zoom into cells and see smaller cells forever. Like Desmos, have you ever used Desmos math software where you can just keep on zooming in? If you could do that, this would be perfect. Okay. So now we've entered this energy into the system. Let's just put some more energy into there. Do we, up here, that's where we did it, right? So now we're just entering all this energy into the system. Every time I click, it's one time step. And we'll go here and let's just reset this. Now we're just letting the equation run wild. So any energy in the system is just going to move around the system without, nothing more is being pushed into the system. Okay, so it's no, oh yeah, we can see already it's no longer absolute, right? Because that red is positive values and the blue is negative. It's like the Eye of Sauron. It's like the Hell 1000 or whatever. Hey Dave, ever seen Space Odyssey? And yeah, we can see here the vector layer. And it's just, it's just positive. But what's interesting is how the vectors, it's pushing inward. We entered positive values. And remember how it was all red? And it still is all red, but it's pushing inward. Now, shouldn't it be pushing outward? I thought I had it set up to where these arrows will, maybe not, I don't know. Maybe this really is just emergent. Maybe it's just emergent. That it's outward here, inward there. I don't know. But, yeah. Also, this was kind of a new insight, and so we're not using diagonals. If we were using when you use diagonal vectors, that's when you see, if you've seen my other videos with the photons and electrons, and they're like radiating outward, you have to use diagonals because those points of radiation are those are points of convergence. So you need to use the diagonal, and I don't have that. I'll set that up. Maybe that's what I'll do tomorrow. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So it should be diagonals, and then we can see this these pressure waves going out, which is really cool. The big thing for this model is to it'll be that. Be showing the diagonals, and it will be creating all the electron clouds. I think will be a very big thing. It'll be very cool. And yeah, any questions? I see somebody watching. Should I do anything? You want me to do anything with this? Should I enter any values? Or if not, I'll give you 30 seconds, and then I'm going to call it. Yeah, but it's cool. I mean, yeah, it's cool. I don't know if yeah. Well, yes, sir. Yes, I'm taking questions. The layers. Yes, sir. The vectors are at the bottom. So, and how do they interact with the rest? So, what, I'll show you. I'll walk you through it really quick. So what's going on here, and there's a video on my channel where you can see a better explanation. I should make a new video where it's even better, but there's another video on my channel. It should be there's only 3 videos on my channel right now. And one will give a walkthrough of how to reproduce this automaton. And this is an updated version of the automaton. But what's going on here is you have this layer here. And what it's doing is it's averaging. It has to average down here. And that's because of computation. And if you know computers compute sequentially. So what will happen is if you don't have them calculating off opposing grids, is it will start calculating sequentially like you're reading, a book, like left to right. It'll just go like this, and it'll start. And because it's doing it sequentially, it will calculate and be distorted. And it needs to be calculating ping-ponging back and forth. It needs to calculate the entire grid and then calculate it down here. Otherwise, it's like a funhouse mirror, like in a like at a fair or something. When you go into the wacky funhouse. So it all needs to be calculating simultaneously. Our universe is simultaneous. If you look around, everything appears to be happening at the same time. So that's what we're trying to reproduce. And what it does is it averages its neighbors. And in this is the same equation across the entire grid. It's just repeating that equation across the entire grid. And so what it's doing is it's adding all of the local magnitudes, and then it's dividing it by pi, 3.14. And it's doing that because pi is the area of a circle. So with a radius of 1. So it's just basic geometry that a circle with a radius 1 has an area of pi. So we think of the area that's being calculated as pi, and then going back to here, not there, hold on. This is what we are thinking of. when, like if you could zoom into that cell, it would look like this. And it's calculating the area, which is 1, and then it's normalizing each neighbor to 1 using this here. And yeah, hold on. You said I'm looking away because I got, personal. I don't know what's on my computer right now. It could be like it could be like my bank account number. Who knows? I use Excel for a lot of different things. So, and then what it does, so it takes these, it's averaging back and forth, and then over here, this grid is what we have been calling the change layer. And it takes its cell and see how it's the same equation over and over again, just referencing a different point. And they subtract. So we're subtracting, if you think of these like time steps, time step 1, time step 2, they subtract. And that is what's going on here. And then there is a heat map over it. So if the value is negative, it's blue, and the value is positive, it's red. So these are all positive values. And if you zoom in, you'll see it's because they're positive. And these are not just like 4, 3. I mean, like if you, here, watch, they're going to be, yeah, see decimals. There are a lot of decimals here. The computation going on here is really, it seems simple, but it's just crazy. These are all irrational numbers for the most part. And you have to tell the computer to stop calculating after a certain, decimal value, because it would just calculate forever. It would crash your whole computer. It's kind of awesome when you think about it. I mean, because the universe is like doing this. And if you look at it from far away, like we're just looking at the values, and you can see even just when looking at the numbers, it creates like essentially a hydrogen atom. I mean, it's so wicked, dude. Like when I first started figuring this out, I was like, was my finger over the, when I first started figuring this out, I was like, my jaw was on the floor. I mean, look at that. Look at that. And then what's going on here, so it takes these values, subtracts them, and then the question is, okay, so what is the direction of change? Because a vector is an arrow, and a vector points in the direction of change. So then we have to figure out a way to do that. And there's no arrows native to Excel, so we use wingding fonts. Like if you know wingdings, it's like a font, right? And we use the wingding, these are wingdings. So the joke is that the universe runs on wingdings and Excel. And it's like this crazy long calculation just to input the wingdings. But basically these are like saying, if it's saying, look around at each cell, look around at your neighbors. And if that cell's the biggest, then it's this letter. Or if that cell's the biggest, it's that letter. It's basically asking, what is the biggest local cell? And then based on the biggest local cell, whatever it is, it inputs a certain letter. And these letters reference wingdings fonts, which then get pushed out to here. Wingdings. And then they have to concatenate, because you need different equations to find the positive and negative arrows. It's just Excel. It's because we're doing this in Excel. It's not like made for reproducing physics. So concatenate means that we're doing a certain set of, see how there's this big opening? That means that there's something positive here, but we cannot calculate two different, what was it? We cannot calculate two different wingding, that was it. We cannot calculate two different wingding alphabets at the same time. I think that was it. Or something like that. Anyway, I'd have to go back through and remember why we did it. It's pretty complex, dude. But you can see, the point is that these are only positive, and these are the negative. So we have them side by side. So it actually splits off. They calculate the positive and the negative, and then they concatenate on top of each other, which means it's like we're like slapping them on top of each other. And that creates this. That's pretty much it. So it's very simple in principle. I mean, it's averaging locally in a circle, in a unit circle. And in two different time steps, you can think of this as like 1 Planck time, 2 Planck time, 3, 4, 5, 6, because they ping pong 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 forever. And then they subtract, because you can only find, if you think about what movement actually is, movement is a subtraction of two different points in time. Like, think about a movie. Like, if you just freeze the movie, think about somebody throwing a baseball, like on, ESPN or whatever. If you push pause, the baseball's frozen. What direction is the baseball going? You don't know because it's frozen. But then if you look at another frame, you see, oh, the baseball was there. Now it's here. Okay, now we can determine its direction. And that is what these vector arrows are. It's determining the direction of motion. Hopefully that answers your question. How about one more? If you have one more, I'll take one more because I think this is fun. I like doing this. It's fun. And the thing is, if I could get paid to do this, I'd be so happy. Like, people get mad at me and say like, oh, you're trying to charge for things. You're trying to create pay layers and things like that. Dude, I want to be able to do this all day. And I can't. I want to work on this all day long. I want to talk about it all day long. I can't do that without funding. It's really that simple. Because right now I have to hang up and I have to go and pay bills and not just pay bills, but I have to go and like do things that are going to make me money so I can keep my lights on. When really it'd be cool if yeah. Anyway, I think I'm going to call it a day, and thanks for watching. I enjoy doing it. So thanks. Yeah. What's the thought? Garrett Lisi? Yeah, actually, that's a really good idea. You're probably right. I should reach out to him. Good idea. Yeah, I've tried to reach out to Wolfram. I reached out to Wolfram. Maybe, I don't know, dude. Like, I don't know. I'm doing this out of like good faith, goodwill. There's a lot of people who they just do it for attention. They just do it, and it's about just them. Like, I approached Wolfram with this and his team, and I posted it on Wolfram's Twitter, and it got like more likes on his own tweet than his tweet. Like, he tweeted something about physics, and I was like, Dr. Wolfram, look at this. I was inspired by you. I've been working on this for like 10 years, however long it's been. And take a look. And it got more likes, if I remember correctly, than his original tweet. And then like that was the last thing he tweeted for months. And then he comes back like months later and he's like, I had this breakthrough idea. Here's my unified physics theory. And like, so, I don't think Garrett Lisi would probably even respond to me. But I don't know if you know about, I know a little bit about Garrett Lisi. And the dude seems to be like, I don't want to be, basically look at his Instagram. He's on vacation his entire life. Like, he is on vacation his whole life. He's parasailing. He's on yachts. He's apparently got some like facility in the mountains, which sounds like it's a mansion in the mountains that he calls like his research center, but it just sounds like a mansion that's in the mountains. And is the word trust fund or like, I don't know what it is, but I don't think the guy really cares. To be honest, the dude is on a never-ending vacation. I mean, seriously, go look at his Instagram or Twitter. Never-ending vacation. I don't know, but yeah, maybe I should reach out to him. I don't know. I don't care. The guy's on TED Talk was on TED Talks, and TED Talks is like you need connections. I listen to TED Talks, and half the people on there. Yeah, I did check out Wolfram's work. I mean, I'm pretty convinced that Wolfram was inspired by what I tweeted to him, is what I think happened. I was inspired by Wolfram, by the way. I was inspired by Wolfram. I've said that from the very beginning. This is inspired by a new kind of science. And a new kind of science that was published like 20 years ago. And then I posted this and I was like, hey man, look how cool this is. And then he disappears, doesn't respond to it, but he has liked this on Reddit. He has liked this. Cool. I hope so. I hope so. And if I inspire you, let me know. And I will most likely be very enthusiastic about it. I mean, yeah, I mean, that seems like normal. Like it seems normal that people have, you wouldn't be the first, by the way. People have approached me and been like, hey, you inspired me to do this. And I'm always like, that's awesome. That's cool. And I always promote that. I don't know what that means. What is that like some kind of, what's FRB12? I'll write it down and I'll Google it. I could probably Google that, right? Was that the wow signal? The wow signal? Is that just at the top of my head? That's what I'm thinking. Like that was the code for the wow signal, right? I'll have to Google it. FRB10. Oh, yeah. It's one of the radio bursts. Yeah, I knew it was something like that. Yeah, you probably could. You probably could. Right. Yeah. Contact, man. That's one of my favorite movies. The book's very good too. Yeah, you probably could. I mean, once we make this automaton, we scale it up to like billions of cells. You're creating a universe. Like this is the simulation. You know how Elon Musk talks about we're quickly creating a simulation? That's what this is. This is the simulation. Yeah. Anyway, I gotta go. This has been fun though, dude. Someone's calling in. I gotta take this phone call. This has been really fun. I'll probably do it again. Yeah. Thanks for stopping by. I hope I inspire you. If you do anything cool, let me know. I'll be here. Bye.